and welcome to And It's Live, the history of the Premier League. We are wrapping up 94, 95, and one of the most thrilling ends to a Premier League season, even in the whole arc of its history. David Edgar is here, as always. My name's Martin. Adam still out of action, but will be joining us when we regroup in the new year, David, for 95, 96, class of 92, and all of that. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. Yes, be good to have him back on the show. But it really was a thrilling conclusion, certainly to the new Premier League. I think it's one. I mean, a last day shootout, they're always the best for a neutral, especially one that could have gone either way so often during the course of that 90 minutes. And it's the first I recall, maybe wrong, but the first I recall, the two games are on at the same time and you could flick between them. I don't recall that happening. Now, of course, we would be questions in Parliament if that wasn't the case. But back then, the thrilling novelty of being able to jump between the two was enormous.
It was indeed. We'll get to that. We left last week with those incredible scenes, that incredible situation at Selhurst Park on the 27th of January. Let's pick that up again then, David. United try and get ahead of the game effectively and ban Cantona for the remainder of the season. So, taking the... or being the bigger party, I suppose, taking ownership, taking responsibility, and I'm guessing trying to offset what the FA might have done. But anyway, that's what happened immediately. First of all, were you surprised by that proactivity and, maybe even in a case, take it like a negotiation. We'll suspend them for 5 games. There you are. But I mean, it's to voluntarily take away such a key part of a team in a run up to a run into season when you're behind at this point.
Yes and no. There's an answer that I will
need to explain. Historian's answer.
Yes, it is. I don't believe that even 2 years later they would have done that. And it's because of things like this that change the sort of narrative and relationship and the confidence levels of United. I think that the sensible thing was, if you analyse it the way that we're able to analyse it with both hindsight and even at the time being out with the bubble, by suspending him to the end of the season, they ensured a longer suspension because the FA could not, say, public opinion would not, or rather press opinion would not have allowed the FA.
Manchester United calling the tune.
Yes, they would have been accused of, and maybe United, well, undoubtedly United were trying to get ahead of it, but they would have been accused of saying, all right, so they get to punish him and you don't do anything. So you're absolutely correct to say that from almost a bargaining point of view, what United should have done would have been he is suspended for a month and gambled that they then might go, actually, no, he's suspended to the end of the season and get away with it. So I think, though, that United felt that had they said he's suspended for a month, that they would have been the ones getting it then. And I think in the end, both parties do what they have to do. I think that United have to be seen to be taking a very strong stand. Remember, there were calls to kick him out the game permanently. Never mind just Manchester United. There was certainly calls that Manchester United should terminate his contract, which, by the way, legally, you'll know more about this than me, they would have had the right to do, right? Given the nature of the offence. Yeah.
You try that at your work and see how you go on it.
Yeah, I know that football contracts are different, but generally speaking, if you kick a member, a customer, you're going to be in trouble. But I think that both parties, and it's so interesting to me, Martin, about a time when the press wielded the power to be able to do this, to have people talking about it. And it's changed now because I think it's the reaction that comes direct from the public on social media that changes it. A recent example would be Manchester United with Mason Greenwood. I think most observers are convinced that United's original plan was to return him, to rehabilitate him and integrate him into their first team eventually. And the reaction that they got publicly from people within their, the Manchester United women's supporters group, etc., and the general storm meant that they could back off. But back then, obviously, that doesn't exist, but the press do, and they were loving this. This was a wonderful example to get very moral and upright about something that was shocking. And although we laughed and joked about it last week, and by the way, listeners, we'll continue to, but that's with 30 years. At the time, the shockwaves, and when you were sitting in these shockwaves, stuff like he needs to be banned forever, that didn't sound as wild and draconian as it does now. Stuff like he cannot play for Manchester United again didn't seem outrageous. But I think that in a couple of years, Martin, United might have gone on the offensive a bit more, as you saw with, for instance, the Rio Ferdinand thing. I think United were more confident in who they were. We keep coming back to this, but it's true. This is Manchester United 2 titles in. This is not all-conquering late 90s behemoth Manchester United. Certainly not, mid-2000s Manchester United. It's still growing. It's still evolving. They're still not quite sure of the power that they wield yet. It's coming, and it will come quickly. And I actually think this does it. But of course, the biggest thing for United, Martin, was whether or not that they could keep Cantona, even if they were allowed to and wanted to, because he initially was like, I am done with this country. I am sick of it. Yeah. And it took Alex Ferguson to go visit him in France and to be taken on the back of a motorbike on a journey that I wish the GoPro had been invented for. When Sir Alex was told that Eric was apparently in some remote, and a representative of Eric's, which I strongly suspect might have been a bouncer, turns up on a motorbike, says to Sir Alex, the only thing that would have made this better would have been had it been a sidecar a la Indiana Jones in The Last Crusade. But Sir Alex gets on the back, rides pillion, and goes and sees it. And Cantona, of course, is so touched, and he's spoken at length about this, that Ferguson makes it clear to him, because at the time, I think Inter Milan, who were a draw at that point, Inter Milan wanted him. And I think that Ferguson really felt he might fancy that over and above, the situation. He might actually fancy that. So Ferguson keeps him. Ferguson works to keep him. But in the initial couple of weeks after, we also didn't know, by the way, if he was going to jail. I mean, that's a big thing.
Yeah, so the FA do what you've said they probably felt they absolutely had to. Late February, so a month after United make that initial ban, and they extend that until the end of September. So ultimately an 8-month ban from football. Take that summer period, of course, as you want, but that feels as just like an extra. No, you don't call the shots here. We do. I mean, the magistrates, that's later again. It's the end of March, 23rd of March. He pleads guilty to common assault. He was actually sentenced to 2 weeks in prison. And then he was released on bail pending appeal. The appeal was ultimately successful. Custodial sentence was a nonsense, really. Yes, if you go down the street and kung fu kick someone, you probably end up in a bit of bother. But this is where violence on the football field, regardless if it's a punter or not, it's not a normal situation. Factors have to be taken into account. Anyway,
also service. On it, sorry, just on, sorry to interrupt, but just on that, I do remember actually, and I mentioned this last week, almost the sort of Rolling Stone style, who breaks a butterfly in a wheel. That was referenced, I remember, in a very famous Times article at the time, in which they said Eric Cantona has not been sentenced for his offence. He's been sentenced because he is Eric Cantona. and the judge is trying to set a deterrent, but also, he's making an example of him. Our system of justice is not about that. The idea that no man is above the law. Equally, it means that no man should be singled out. And I found that rather heartening that, here were, for all that were critical of newspapers, here were the broadsheets, the red tops as well, saying this sentence is wildly incongruous and has been given for the wrong reasons. So I'm quick enough to complain about the press on here about some of their behaviours, but they really did rally. And on television, whatnot, because this was back in the time we always had a backbench MP who would be willing to say anything to get on telly. So they were going, no, it's great. But you actually saw there was something, I think, really inherently British about it, in a sense of fair play, which is, look, he's done wrong and we want him punished. But no, you can't, first offence, 2 weeks in jail for this is ridiculous. And they were right. And the appeal judge basically said in his summation, you didn't get sentenced to the guidelines, you got sentenced for who you are, and rebuked the lower court judge. And also he said, I remember saying it, he says, I think it would be far more use to society to use your skills to go and coach school kids, which he did do with community service. And I think we would all agree that's a far better use of him than putting him in jail for a fortnight.
And it was perfect, because he thrived in that role, and United got the benefit of that, I think, just in terms of, again, that overall leadership example most of the time, with their own group of young players that we'll talk about next week. But a loss, David, I think it's fair to say.
Huge.
For the United side. So that was the 25th of Jan, midweek game. And Blackburn then kind of follow that up. They beat Ipswich at home. All's looking nice. United actually respond very well. Kind of typical, I suppose, of what we're going to or should get used to as the years go on. Hits happen, but the big dogs will roll with the punches, come back, and they do come back fairly strongly, David. What have we got here? They beat Villa at home, and a first goal for Andy Cole, which again a lot of people kind of read into, right, here he is, he's up and running, away we go. They go to Main Road and win 3-0, 3 late-ish goals in the last half hour or so, and then go to Carrow Road and win. And it's Blackburn, actually, that don't really respond too well. They draw 1-1 at home to Leeds. And then they go to Spurs, and this game is ramped up by Sky. 4 of the hottest forwards you can possibly imagine. Sheringham, Klinsmann, Sutton and Shearer. 61 league goals between them, and this is the start of February. And Spurs batter them, Davey, 3-1. And yeah, all that momentum, and United have lost their talisman, their best player. It's all getting very tight. Only 2 points in it after that, which Dalglish, again, I'm sorry to kind of keep bringing this up, but his interviews are just the spike. You know how Gordon Strachan was so caustic and dry that the shtick got tired and old fairly quickly. Not in Soccer AM, they absolutely lapped that shit up, but it's just, poor Jeff Shreves, who, has his issues, but he's got to ask a question when they've got 4 points in 4 games, and he's got to put it to him, are you Crumlin still top? 2 points. Last time I looked at the league table, that kind of short shrift, chippy wee man from the west of Scotland, really, and he's opposite number. No stranger to that either, but at that point, mid-Feb, they did look like they don't have this, by the way. They have got great goals, obviously, but they don't know what it's like to go over the line.
No, 100%. I thought that at the time. And I actually think it's interesting you brought up Douglas's manner because it doesn't convey, again, we can only go on what we see on the outside, but it didn't convey calm and relaxed. It conveyed anxious and chippy and quick to slight. These are not things that suggest you're a person in total control of your own destiny, or that you believe that you are. And perception can become reality, can't it? Because then people start whispering it, footballers hear it back, and they start to take it in. I do think it's something managers have to do. I really dislike this when Pep's bad for it now. Now, I know that some of these interviews are stupid questions, or generally anodyne questions, right? Generally really anemic, bloodless questions. And it must get frustrating having to answer X amount of times. I get that. But to me, there's a certain basic human courtesy in it. And I think acting like a prat in those interviews and being snippy and sarcastic is bullying, because the person that you're doing it to can't bite back at you. I would love one of these cameramen, when Pep or whoever said, he asks a question and he gives them one of the snippy answers. He goes, "No, you be a dick about it, by the way, mate. I'm just doing my job here." I would love that. That guy would get his own statue. But I think that they know they can do it. I do get that you're immediately, post-match, you're upset and you're maybe defensive and maybe emotional, but it's part of the job. Although at this point, it's a newish part of the job where you have to do it straight. In the old days, you went into a press conference and the first 10 minutes were off the record, where you vented, and then you did the ordinary, and it never got out till the Monday, and the press, if you had a favourable relationship, would report. Now it's straight away, but it's becoming part of the game. I thought that this is a good side that are quite functional, quite agricultural, quite direct, and in games where they're running into sides who are a wee bit more relaxed than them, Spurs, who have got good players, they're not going to get the 3 points. Pressure's such a big thing, and teams that are chasing a title can't get upset at outsiders questioning if they've got the mentality until they display the mentality. It happened to United, particularly after the year they blew it just before the year Leeds won it. It's always going to be a knock. You can't complain about people questioning if you have an attribute until you demonstrate that you have that attribute. I'm afraid that's just human nature.
So United flying along, and 25th of February, Blackburn drop points again, 0-0 at home to Norwich. Norwich side in a bit of a funk, but United lose, David. They lose at Goodison Park. They lose 1-0. Andy Cole misses a lovely chance early on. And
this was a thing.
Who scores for Everton? But Big Dunk again. An absolutely crushing header, top off, wheeling away. It was captivating.
Yeah, it was. It was dramatic. Goodison at that point could still actually really became a thing, unfortunately, for Everton fans from then to the end of Goodison's lifespan, which could be absolutely rocking when a side came that they maybe didn't see themselves as favourites against. And it was a great old stadium when it was rocking. There's, of course, a whole Liverpool-Manchester thing. We think of it more through the other half of Liverpool, but it's there for the blue half as well. And Big Dunk, he did it. We spoke about it last week about his place in Everton's history, whether or not it's elevated, maybe beyond his contribution. I think a part of that, Martin, is he contributed in big games. When he maybe didn't do it often enough, but when he did do it, it was memorable. And this is memorable. And there was a time, youngsters, where you could take your shirt off and not get booked for it. And Duncan did. And it kind of felt like a release for him, which I think all he'd gone through the previous 12 months, it probably was a little bit. Maybe that's celebrated because it isn't a staged shut off; it's a total whirling dervish.
Oh, it's in the moment, yeah.
In the moment, yeah. But United, look, the Cole miss, it was becoming a thing. People were now highlighting the misses, and it's going to come to a crescendo on the last day of the season, as we know. But it was absolutely now he would have taken that at Newcastle. Is the shot too big for him? Because we know he scores, he puts chances like that away for fun. Is the shot too big for him? There's no Cantona now. He's having to lead the line. All the pressure is on him. £7 million, even without Cantona, he should get them over the line. It did weigh on him. I don't think there's any doubt it weighed upon him. And he's quite a sensitive guy. Andy Cole is not, a kind of he's complex, judging by what managers and teammates have said about him over the years. And I think he maybe did take all of that to heart. He's spoken about it. He felt under a lot of pressure. That transfer fee, which I know to modern ears sounds like nothing, at this time, folks, $7 million, we were expecting every week Andy Cole was going to go out there and bag 3 for that money. It seemed space age. And he looked like a man. Whereas at Newcastle as well, I think maybe it was so stark, Martin, that at Newcastle he'd seemed to play with this freewheeling confidence. He just gave off, I am the number 9 here. I am the guy, and he just played with it. And at United, he seemed within himself. And I have to think that the double whammy of the fee and losing Cantona and him becoming the main man that the hopes were pinned on probably did it. The Spurs game he brought up was a great example of a side who were playing with that freedom, or forward rather, at Spurs, who were playing with that freedom that Cole wasn't playing with at this point. But I remember a very famous quote from Ferguson round about this time, where he said, "He is not going to fail here. We will not let him fail." And that's got to be great to hear from your manager, because what he was saying is, I'm going to back this boy regardless.
Yeah, I mean, there was a joke around the time, maybe later, forgive me, why does Cantona wear his collar up? Because he's too often carrying Cole. Again, the big game, we talked about that Everton game, we'll talk about another one at the very end. He does score. The next game in the list, the famous game, 9-0 at home to Ipswich, he scores 5 goals. And again, people think, well, that's the kind of dam broken. Well, there's a few games before another goal, to be honest. He gets a couple, an easy win at Leicester. He gets a very important couple away to Coventry in a game that probably is underlooked. And then the penalty game of the season, he gets United off and running against Southampton. So he does contribute, but the narrative set, as you mentioned, by the fee and those misses. So United have that wobble, but they come back. But then they have a terrible few days in March, really. A 0-0 draw at home to Spurs. And then they go to Anfield, and Steve McManaman enjoys himself. Liverpool win 2-0. At the same time, Blackburn kind of getting themselves back in business. A very narrow away win at Villa. They beat Arsenal 3-1 at home. A draw at Coventry, and then beating Chelsea. So we get into the end of March, and I mean that leads pretty decent. It's 3 points with a game in hand. Again, when everything looked like it was kind of crumbling for Blackburn, Davy, they'll absolutely take that. And then it's United that go into March and April really stop-start. Beat Arsenal very convincingly. Draw at home to Leeds, a team that more than happy to cause problems. They go to Leicester, win 4-0, as I said. And then it's Chelsea. Chelsea again at home, 0-0. But Blackburn, they go to Everton, win 2-1. I difficult game at that time. A huge win at QPR, Sutton getting crucial goals in both. But then they draw at home to Leeds, and then they lose at home. So they draw away to Leeds, and lose at home to Manchester City. So it's, even though United are not firing, it's just a team that they don't know the rules almost to this game. And it's going to the penultimate and kind of run. There's an 8-point gap with a game in hand. United pull that back, but basically, looking at Blackburn's last 6 games, which 6 league games, that's the run-in, isn't it? That's kind of what we see as the title run-in.
Yeah.
They win 2, and they win the league. Now that probably shouldn't happen. They had a position of some comfort. They were 8 points ahead going into that run, but it was nervy as all hell. Cuffed at Upton Park. The penultimate game, Davey, I think is probably the one that I don't think gets talked about enough. We're going to talk about the finale in a moment. Blackburn played Newcastle at home. United are going to play Southampton at home a couple of days later. I think this was Bank Holiday Monday, actually. Monday Night Football. Shearer puts them ahead, and then Tim Flowers, who there were maybe question marks over now and again, that very unfortunate shot that just kind of bounced over his head, took a ridiculous kind of deflection kind of thing. But he was outstanding that night. Some incredible saves, and I think they all just breathed that sigh of relief. It meant both teams were going away in the final day. Blackburn were 2 points ahead. United were going to Upton Park, not an easy ground at all for them. And Blackburn were going to Liverpool, where mixed emotions, it's probably fair to say, in terms of the support, maybe some of the players. Do they really want to be the team who gives Manchester United another league championship, who spoils the dream of Kenny Dalglish, the Mr. Liverpool? So I get why when Blackburn fans are leaving Ewood Park on that Monday night after such a tense game, thinking, right, we just need to better United's result, but they'll not lie down, because that's an allegation of match fixing, but teams try harder in certain games. We know this. Look at Leeds United's fixtures against United. The teams get up for certain games and they are flat in others. And I certainly felt going into that, there's going to be no drama here, actually. I think Blackburn will do this convincingly. They've got over that penultimate hurdle, actually.
I thought Blackburn would win, yes. I did think there would be an element of what you said. How would you feel as a football fan, given the unique nature of the league, the team we follow is in? It will
might find out this season.
Maybe I doubt it, though. And you know, I've been asked about this, and the correct answer, of course, the official answer is always want my team to win. Just care about us. Don't care about anything else. The true answer is totally different.
No one cares in 20 years about a game that means nothing, but they'll care if titles mean an accumulation of titles. And again, United on this now, it felt inconceivable in 1995 that United would get anywhere near Liverpool's title haul, but it was clear that they were going to be the team of the 90s. And it's also the whole summer that you've got to put up with. And I mean, Liverpool and Manchester are pretty close. People work together. You've got to put up with that. The famous thing about David Murray at Rangers once said that, you know, well, it's not just about benchmarking ourselves against Celtic, it's about benchmarking ourselves against Bayern Munich. And John Gilligan said to him, well, the thing is, David, no Rangers fan I know goes into work on Monday to be confronted by a Bayern Munich fan. And it's true. There's a brilliant one as well, Martin, a few years ago when Inter Milan, AC Milan were going for the title, and Roma were going for the title, along with Inter Milan. Inter came to Rome to play Lazio, and their fans
didn't, they didn't cheer a goal that went in against them, but they unfurled a very sarcastic banner which read, "Oh no," and someone going. So I think that they made their feelings clear on that. But I thought they would do it. I thought Liverpool would be competitive enough, right? Not busting a gut. They're just about to go on holiday. I just didn't see it. And I thought United would win, though, at West Ham. I think that there is an intense feeling in that game that wasn't there in the Anfield game. You could sense the nerves, but they were only coming from one side. Blackburn were incredible. You could see it. You could see the way the players' movements, couldn't you?
Not Shearer's movement. Let's take a break and we'll get into that final day and then wrap up some of the other bits and pieces. Okay, final Sunday of the Premier League season. And you mentioned at the top of the show, David, this was novel. Sky had Sky Sports 2 as well as Sky Sports then, which meant both games were going to be shown with the ability to, of course, take pictures from one game into the coverage of the other. So for Armchairs fans, this was different level stuff. And Blackburn get off to the start. I mean, Shearer puts Blackburn ahead. And I was watching that again in preparation for this. To take that in the instant, it looks a hell of a lot more difficult than it actually is. It's an absolutely fantastic goal. And that's it. Away we are.
I didn't see Liverpool coming back.
No.
First goal I thought was absolutely crucial. The thing about Shearer, one of the reasons why you or I rate him, so I've actually had this argument online with younger football fans talking about Shearer, and they say things like, great in the Premier, but didn't really do it in the Champions League. And I'm like, you're missing the point here, lads. The thing I loved about Shearer was, one, I think, the rampaging Roy the Rovers type guy, everybody loves that. But the sheer range, Martin, of finishes that he could draw upon and the selection of them at the right times, I thought was just, and this is an example of it. As you say, he makes something that's very, very difficult look very, very easy. And that's an art in itself. And the reaction from the Liverpool fans is funny. It's muted. I think it's fair to say. But the longer it goes at 1-0, I think you start to see tension. I was watching the Manchester United game and flicking to the Blackburn game. I remember very specifically. And there seemed to be more action in the United game because they start to miss chances. And we are not talking long-range efforts, half chances, speculative chances. The West Ham crowd they're not in any way conflicted. They hate Manchester United and they want to stuff it for them. Was it just the Inns thing or did it go back further?
Oh, I think we'd need some club experts there. I can't think of anything.
I remember it post-Inns hugely.
Oh, huge, yeah.
But I don't remember it, or I don't know if it was pre that. And I don't remember West Ham. It's not just because they were the best team, because they weren't like that with Liverpool, West Ham. Let us know in the comments. If you're a Hammer or a United fan, let us know in the comments.
Yeah, and it was the way Inns did it, wasn't it? With the unveiling of the
wearing the shirt,
unveiling and all that kind of stuff. Yeah. So half time, West Ham were 1-up. Michael Hughes, I think, and Shearer's goal. Right, half time, this is going to peter out into the inevitable and get the trophy on. And then United get back into it, as they do. Brian McClare, very much at the end of his career at United, coming up with a great header, actually. And United are just throwing everything. And I think Inns goes close, isn't he? And obviously Cole The ball just
Oh
won't
my
fall.
God.
It's one of those. It's like being in a dream. I don't know if you've ever been in a dream where, for whatever reason,
It's
you imagine you're
cursed at
playing
this
football.
point, and you can only feel for him.
Yeah, it's just not going to fall. And then John Barnes rolls one in.
You can only feel for the poor boy at this point because he's wearing the look of a man who thinks he's never going to score another goal in his life. As you say, though, it was interesting because this was not a total failure. He scored some goals, not as many as you think, but
We've said it before. When that fee is there, narrative set, you're going to come and you're going to score big goals, big games, and propel United to the title. And he did score goals. And actually, as I said, the 3-2 against Coventry, the third last game I think United played away, Coventry battling away as they were. Those goals shouldn't be discounted at all. So clearly, there was signs if anyone wanted to look at them that he was going to be all right. But at Everton and at West Ham, you have those moments, and those are the ones we choose to isolate. As I said, John Barnes, talking about Brian McClare rolling back the years, John Barnes does. And this very weird reaction around Anfield, like, all right, both games 1-1 would be good, actually, because we haven't lost. And that's great. And then Jamie Redknapp,
last minute,
curls one in and
doesn't celebrate.
No. And then United can't get it done. And then the news comes through, and Douglas, he doesn't really do dugouts. He loves to stand at the side of a dugout, I noticed. I wondered if that was just an Anfield thing, that he wouldn't sit in the away dugout kind of thing, but he does it actually quite a lot. With that jacket on.
Dugout's the worst place in the world, and maybe absolutely. Dugout is football managers, somebody's got to be brave enough to say they don't need you shouting at them, right? That is not going to. I know you want to feel like you've got a bit of control over them. You get a far better view of what's going on sitting up in the director's box. That's where you should be, and you can go down if you need to. We have a lot of communication devices these days, Martin. You can have instantaneous communication with your boys down there. But when Redknapp scored that free kick, they cut to because you know how the way at Anfield's just off that side. Blackburn had spun them round at the start, so Liverpool weren't kicking to the Kop in the second half.
Yeah.
They've done that thing, which I believe in general should be illegal. And I don't think it should be against
a home have a designated end, and that's it.
I don't just believe, listeners, that it should be a rule in football. I believe it should be illegal, and that the captain who chooses to do that should face punishment with the court. I hate it, but Redknapp scores that goal, and you see, because the Blackburn fans are there, just off the side, and you see them, they're just absolutely crestfallen. And immediately they turn to, there's always a designated one on every supporter's bus, the bloke with the radio. What's happening? None of your phone stuff here, listeners, right? None of your, I'll just flick up and keep a watch. It's a wee guy with a radio, and a medium wave radio at that, I guarantee, right? Listening to 909. And he's listening to it to find it. You and I have seen our team involved in last day shootouts, and thankfully, mostly came out in the. I can only think of one where we didn't. Right, mostly came out in the right end of it. Thankfully, and luckily, we have always done our part. We have not had the situation where the other team have failed to do their part, meaning that if we had got a victory, we win, and haven't done it. That feeling must be for United fans when they hear that result, that Blackburn couldn't do it, that Liverpool, of all teams, had beaten them, and you couldn't get the job done. That is absolutely the worst feeling, I remember interviewing Alex McLeish about a famous last day title win for Rangers, and I asked him what he said to the players at half time, and he said, I just said to them, make sure you win. We can't control what happens over there, but if you don't win today and then it turns out that a win would have done it, that lives with you forever, and it'll be worse because it'll eat at you. And that must be the case for United. They've missed so many chances. Cole is now absolutely in the firing line, Martin. He's absolutely copping it. The ban for Cantona is copping it. Everything's copping it. Liverpool fans join in with the celebrations on Anfield because, as you say, favourite son. They've won the game, so no one can accuse them of not competing. So honour and dignity intact. They've not won the league, I'm sure. If you asked everybody in that ground, if we don't win the league, who would you like to see win it? It would be the guy who's got the trophy. And there was something from a neutral point of view, I remember at the time thinking post Hillsborough for Dalglish to get that title in that ground with Blackburn.
Well, for sure. And we
really
talked about this in earlier shows, that Blackburn and Newcastle United gave a bit of something that, wow, there's a new
teams can do this
in football, in English football, and that I think we all kind of liked that, to be honest.
We still do. I mean, I still think if you ask a football fan, who do you want to win the title between, say, in 2025 or 2026, who do you want to win the title between Arsenal, Manchester City and Liverpool? Most people would say Arsenal because it's new, it's different. I think that's just natural. You want to see it change. The dream scenario would be 6 teams are going for it and they could all win it, and you just don't get it in leagues, unfortunately, anymore. But it would be magic.
It would indeed. It is a final day drama, inverted commas, maybe.
It went right to the last kick of the ball. So, I mean, that's all you can ask for.
But it's still weird. It's still somehow anticlimactic, if that makes any sense.
Because
compared to Aguero and all the rest of it.
Because there's no moment that is exactly it. There's no single moment of triumph. That was the goal that won the title. There's none of that. It doesn't happen. The story of the day is misses. That's the story of the day. What delivers a title is the fact that they couldn't put the ball in the net from one of these dozen very presentable chances. So there is not that highlight reel, here is the goal. It doesn't need to be an Aguero 96 minute, but it does need to be, here you see the player getting the header that wins, that won the game, that won the league. So it did feel anticlimactic. I remember vividly Redknapp's goal because it felt like almost unreal, almost like the game was secondary to the drama of it, that it didn't really matter if United don't score anyway. That goal's pointless, it's absolutely meaningless. So all the focus was on the United game at that point. But afterwards, I just remember the post-match interviews, and Ferguson is, he is angry, an angry man.
Well, he will do what he has to do in the summer to redress that. But yeah, I think there was a sense that it was good to have that new winner. The football they played was very direct, and that might have only been an issue for the connoisseurs, I'll be honest, at this point in English football. They were few and far between. Plenty of goals. British team, Van Henningberg. And, famous manager with a fitting coda. No one knew that. No one knew that he was like, oh, fuck this. I'm going up the stairs. I think people saw, look at the money Blackburn have got and what they've spent, and this could be a real ding dong for a while yet. But little did we know this was pretty much it for them. At the bottom, David, not quite the great escape. There's a bit of scrapping about teams again saying, right, we need to make a change managerially. Big Ron came into Coventry along with Gordon Strachan as a assistant manager. Still kicking a ball, I think. And got them out of a bit of bother. When we get to that final day, there's nothing really in it, to be honest. Ipswich are gone, Leicester are gone, Norwich are gone, and it's really Crystal Palace and Villa, maybe Sheffield Wednesday getting dragged into that. Villa draw, so Palace need to go to Newcastle and win, and they can't. They lose 3-2, and it's Palace that disappeared, David. And Villa talked about last week with Brian Little, just about squeezing over the line. Trevor Francis would say goodbye to Sheffield Wednesday because after two very good seasons, the first two seasons of the Premier League, this was a bit too close for comfort. Man City in 15th. Brian Horton there now. He disappears as they scramble about, even though they've got Uwe Leslie, cult hero, putting goals in all over the place. And West Ham and Everton were in trouble at some stages there, David. Harry Redknapp got West Ham out of that. And, of course, Joe Royle got Everton out of that, more of which later on. At the top end of the table in the final run of it, I mean, outside of Blackburn, Nottingham Forest have to be the team of the season in third place, and Collymore, Steve Stone, we kind of mentioned giving him his flowers a wee bit. Spurs to finish 7th, given the situation they were in, I think is decent, because they were
given the situation they were in is decent, but for the money
not
spent
given the
and
outlay
the
in
talent, it kind of fed into the narrative, or even just the vague sense that you had as a neutral if they're not a serious, they're a big club, but they're not a serious big club.
Well, here's the proof. Not just that Spurs aren't a serious big club, really, but also the Premier League isn't quite there, because Player of the Year, darling of White Hart Lane, Jurgen Klinsmann, is off to Germany, he's off to Bayern, and the league just can't keep a hold of these players. Newcastle fell away after the Cole sale, which you'd imagine, but still 6th. Leeds actually on 5th place. That there's a recovery there post their championship win, and then that dreadful first season in the Premier League where they just couldn't cope with back passes and whatever else. And Tony Yeboah signing, and they'll be interesting going forward. But in 4th place, Davy, Liverpool. Again, given their travails at points, that was not bad at all. Roy Evans there, and they win the League Cup, or the Coca-Cola Cup, beat Bolton Wanderers. Steve McManaman with 2, and McManaman and Fowler and Redknapp. We've talked about it a lot, but people did what they do and say, "Well, that's a step." Huge step forward. Liverpool win a trophy, first trophy. I was going to say for, only 3 years. They won the FA Cup in 1992. But that's them. They'll be back, and they will punch quite close the following season. But winners write history, Davey, and that's the way it goes, especially in sport. But I think that there's something in that team that's actually quite enjoyable.
The Liverpool team. Oh, yeah, 100%. Loads of players in that Liverpool team. I liked Rob Jones. Thought he was a quality player. Played for England, didn't he, Rob Jones? Well, maybe a few times, but he did.
Yeah, maybe
he definitely got capped. Yeah, he definitely got capped. Fowler, I thought, was brilliant. McManaman was joy to watch. That Wembley game that you mentioned, he just destroys. A pretty decent. Look at some of the names in that Bolton side, by the way. And Liverpool took a real liking.
They're on the up.
Yeah, took a real liking to McAteer that day. And of course, he'll end up there. But you've got, I think, Stubbs, Thompson, McGinley, all in there. That was a good side. But he was immaculate that day. And you mentioned his performance against United earlier in the season as well. And he was, I think, an early version, along with, say, someone like Lee Sharp, of what wing play was becoming, where it wasn't about a 5'3" tricky guy, who would, do feints and shimmies and kick the ball over. These were real powerful guys who could run 60 yards with the ball, and you couldn't catch them, but they had the control to go along with it, and they could cut inside and finish. I thought that they were going to go on to better things because it was a young side, and in Roy Evans, he had brought for the first time, I think, certainly since Dalglish left, that sense of calm, where you just looked at it and you thought, right, that they've weathered the myriad storms that were battering them. He exuded a sense of, look, I know what I'm doing. This is Liverpool. Quite self-effacing as well. He wasn't, but he just gave that vibe off without overly trying to do it. They played good football. Jamie Redknapp, cracking footballer when he was fit. I mean, he really was a superb midfielder when he was fit. And they had other young lads that were coming through that you thought. So I felt that they were definitely on the right track. I don't think I felt that the League Cup win that's it. But I felt they were on the right track, certainly. Forest, I didn't see at this point as a one-season wonder either. I thought that because, as you mentioned, that
there's heritage.
Yeah, and
you're pasting. You're pasting what you're seeing onto that story that you know and kind of trust and patterns, and like, well, they'll do. Of course they will, because they've been successful recently. And
it's also why Sheffield Wednesday and Aston Villa being at the bottom of the table was so shocking, because they didn't belong there, and it was surprising to see. But I thought Newcastle was the next. That was what really interested me next season. Was right, okay. They didn't fall apart after Cole went, but nor had they continued on that upward trajectory that they've been on solidly for a few years. And it was like, right, has this petered out now? Or are they going to go again in the summer in the market? This was a summer I really remember thinking this is going to be really interesting, because there were a few sides that were talking about we're going to go big. Liverpool, you felt were going to go big. Certainly felt that Villa were going to go big. Certainly felt that Newcastle were going to go big. Tottenham spoke about going big. Arsenal spoke about going big. We haven't mentioned Arsenal because they're pretty blah this season, really.
Mention them after the break, but it's more for European context. But yeah, a big summer. We'll come to that when we return in the new year, because you're right, that summer of 95 is... there's just always so much going on in the Premier League. That's kind of part of its thing, I suppose. Couple more cups to talk about after this. So yeah, Arsenal spoke about their travails last week, David, and George Graham gets the boot, and Stuart Houston, and they kind of meander in the league. I'll just double check where exactly they finish up in the final reckoning. 12th, which is not an Arsenal finish.
Not acceptable now for Arsenal.
No, but they are Cup Winners' Cup holders, and they continue to do well, even though they drew 1-1 at home in the quarterfinal first leg against Auxerre. They win away from home. Ian Wright is scoring goals in this competition. He's absolutely loving it. Sampdoria is the semi-final. The other semi-final is Real Zaragoza and Glenn Hoddle's Chelsea. And the prospect of an all-English Cup Winners' Cup final, another marker after the kind of humiliation of Blackburn and Manchester United this particular season of England's return. And I think a lot of people expected that Chelsea get absolutely battered in Spain, and that was kind of that. I think it was 3-0 in the first leg. And a valiant effort, 3-1, but Zaragoza had equalised in between some of those Chelsea goals. So not to be there, but again, Glenn Hoddle's stock in terms of mixing it with foreign opposition was not going unnoticed, let's put it that way. But also against Sampdoria, an absolutely brilliant old school European semi-final. Arsenal win 3-2 at home, 2-0 up at half-time. A Steve Bold double, David, take that to the bank. Jugovic gets a goal back, and Ian Wright again before Jugovic gets another. Set up for this incredible game in Genoa, and eventually it that's what it was. It was a repeat. 3-2. Arsenal, Stefan farts because they were 3-1 down. Bellucci scored. It was 1-1. Again, Ian Wright, Bobby Mancini putting Sampdoria ahead. Ian Wright again scoring, and Bellucci a couple. I mean, in jig time, 85, 86 minutes. Sampdoria have got the control, and then Schwartz pops up with I got to take us into extra time. It goes all the way to penalties. Not the most high-scoring penalty shootout. Sinisa Mihailovic misses a penalty. Can you imagine, Davey? Lee Dixon, Tony Adams do not miss. They are converted. But the hero of that penalty shootout is David Seaman. And he kind of has this reputation now as a shootout kind of keeper. And so it might have felt in that final in Paris, I'm sure. Parc des Princes against Zaragoza. They take the lead with 25 minutes to go, but John Hartson, well, he gets the equaliser. It's a bit scrappy, but they do the job in the end. Goes to extra time, and it is meandering towards penalties, David. And again, I said it. I think everybody said it at the time. Well, here we go. If it goes to penalties, they've done that thing, and that keeper's done that thing. They'll be fine. And then
Naeem from the halfway line.
Yes. Takes aim. And I think it might have been Fred McCauley or Tam Cowan in Scotland said anyone who can lob Seaman from 50 yards is a hero in my books. But it was a sensational way to win a European trophy. Seaman kind of caught up in the back of that net shambolically. Keepers can't do it. They can't do that gracefully. They can't be beaten gracefully. And it was such an awkward image for someone who had obviously played his part in kind of getting them to that stage. And I remember being really disappointed because I did have a kind of fondness for Arsenal in that European context because they just looked like a team who knew how to navigate these waters in a way that no one English club really did, to my memory, at this stage.
It's interesting you say that. I knew a lot of people actually who were quite caught up and know this Arsenal team better than they know a lot of the teams from this era, and it was because they were on basically for 2 years live on free television.
Yeah,
because these games were on ITV or STV in Scotland, and a lot of people didn't have Sky at the time, and would need to go to the pub to watch the games, or one person would have it and people would pile to their house. This was on every Wednesday. So a lot of people have got a fondness for them. I felt in that final, I thought their name was on it after Genoa, because the Schwartz last second goal and then penalty shootout. I thought, yeah, they're on it. Meandering towards penalties is a perfect description. It's almost like both teams have settled for it, and that happens a lot where teams go, we'll take our chances in that, but we're not conceding now, because if we concede now, it's done. And you see it often, and it's an outrageous strike. It really is, to be a quality goalkeeper from that distance. I remember actually the Saturday after it, first minute, I think the opposition team took a kick off and the home crowd shouted "shoot," which I thought was brilliant. But yeah, you're right. Seaman just lying there, crumpled up in the net, an image that we'd see again in 2002 with the Ronaldinho goal. It is embarrassing for a goalkeeper. It maybe shouldn't be, because it's a hell of an effort, and it's not like you're losing a goal like that every week. But there must be that sense of, I should not have been beaten from this distance. the whole Arsenal thing that season had felt temporary. Stuart Houston's in there as the manager. He's not going to be the manager. We all know he's not going to be the manager long term. They felt like sort of in a holding pattern. The league form, I would say it was quite as bad as Tottenham's league form 24-25, where they just gave up to concentrate on a European trophy and admitted publicly, we are giving up. We don't care about this. We're not going to get relegated. Therefore, we're going to concentrate on this. But there was a sense that the eggs were very much in that basket. And I think when you look at that Final Four, I make Arsenal the favourites. They've got the trickiest tie, but I make Arsenal the favourites. They've been over the course. It's their trophy. They have guys who are flying in Europe, if not domestically. But I don't think they played well in the final. I really don't. I think that they were a better side than they demonstrated against a good side, but they had beaten a better side the previous round. I don't think there's any doubt about that. The counterfactual of an Arsenal-Chelsea final would have been pretty exciting. I wonder how the FA and the British government would have felt, though, about that. We are not far removed from the 80s at this point.
Not even that far removed from the 80s. The other issue that we didn't bring up in the show happened that spring in Dublin when England played the Republic of Ireland in a friendly, and it was abandoned in very little time at all because of
3 minutes, I think.
And that was very much seen as the absolute nadir, I suppose, in terms of the kind of modern in the 1990s.
Well, also because Euro 96 was coming up, and then there was a sense
absolutely terrified of that.
You know, we can't take you anywhere, you know. So I suppose they were probably relieved that both didn't make it, but I think as well, everything about this, the narrative, Naeem ex-Spurs, you know, it's just, of course it is. The one player in that team, they don't want to win it. And you do get kind of, I think, annoyed as a supporter to lose to a goal like that because it seems especially cruel because you can't really blame anybody for it. It's almost, you know, you were irrelevant to it, your team were irrelevant to it. He just did something epic at the best possible time. And by the way, as a player like that, you might as well retire the next morning because that's it. That ain't getting topped. And for a club like Zaragoza, they're not a massive Spanish side. That's an enormous success to take home a European trophy. But to beat 2 English sides along the way, I'm sure was very satisfying. But Arsenal, to me, felt at a crossroads. And of course, we know they are. And, you know, they're going to change it. They're going to go with the aforementioned Bolton manager who'd been impressing a lot of people in Bruce Rioch and spend big that summer. But it did sort of feel like post-Graham, we were waiting for that era. This felt like an addendum, Martin, rather than any sort of a brave new chapter.
Yeah, it's a good way of putting it, Davey, actually. Arsenal wasn't to be for their double Cup Winners' Cup dream. The FA Cup final, though, David, Manchester United expected to get something out the season back in the FA Cup final, again, holders of the FA Cup. And Joe Royal's Everton were in the way after a quite remarkable semi-final against Tottenham Hotspur. Many people really tipping Spurs. They just had that kind of, they're a cup team anyway, and I know the year doesn't end in a 1, but there's a real feel. And also, that's almost trying to manifest that final into being. Spurs versus Manchester United, Klinsmann and all of that. That would have been superb. And Everton were brilliant. And Daniel Amokachi taking full agency, I suppose, is one way of putting it.
A bit main character energy from him that day, yes. The big man. I think there was a feeling at Spurs that you could get at them with that type of football. I mean, Everton were very much playing that day, kind of in-your-face, physical. We'll see how they handle this. They don't like it up them style. Dogs of war, Joe Royal, you know. And the big man he's unplayable. Look, he was a supremely talented player when he could be arsed. It was just But lack of arseness, not a lack of arse. He was well. He did an adequate sufficiency of that from the Lord, but he was brilliant. Yeah, he was. Yeah, he was. But when he was on it, I mean, he was brilliant, and he gave Spurs a torrid time. I remember actually, Martin, on Fantasy Football, following week, the episode after that, they had Chaz and Dave in, and Chaz and Dave they come on, and Chaz and Dave are going, Spurs are on their way to Wembley, and the two of them are like, lads, it's off, it's done, the singles, it's off.
yeah.
And I thought that was brilliant. Going into the final, I don't think many gave Everton a chance, even if somebody wanted.
Remember Everton's FA Cup final song? It was by?
I do. The Farm.
All Together Now, yeah.
All Together Now, yes, I do remember it. Pete Houghton's a big fan, yeah. All Together Now, Forever Ton.
Wonderfully.
Probably the only time a song about World War One, the trenches, has been repurposed into a football. Do you remember the year before, Manchester United, who they got into the charts with? With Come On You Reds.
Come on, you Reds, yeah. But
But
they released an album about. Anyway, we're down a rabbit hole.
It was the Quo. It was the Quo. They were a bit trendier than that 5 years later. Yes, exactly. Yeah, they were a bit cooler.
Like you're in Manchester, mate. The early 90s, guys. I mean, you're tripping over the best bands in the country.
It seems like a long time ago, but what I'll point out is the year that Manchester United released Come On You Reds with Status Quo was the year that Definitely Maybe and Part Life came out. So it wasn't, the cultural wasteland at that point. The big thing in Everton's favour, I remember, was the will Ryan Giggs be fit for it. And he wasn't. And United badly missed him. Badly missed his creativity that day. Everton had to make this a fairly grim game of football to succeed. And they did succeed in that. This is not a classic. If you are being someone who likes Everton, I have watched it back subsequently since over the years. And it's not a good game of football. United look tired, Martin, I have to say. And this is not always something, certainly not in finals, I would associate with Ferguson era Man United. But I think this was, the one title that got away that actually did certainly have a short-term effect on them. But we already know that My Team Are Tired is crystallising in Ferguson's mind. We'll talk about it a lot more next episode. Without Giggs, there was and no Cantona, obviously, there was very little sparkle to them. And this is why I never, ever considered Peter Schmeichel the best goalkeeper in the world. And that might be sacrilege to some of our viewers, and I apologise. But I never did. I thought he was a brilliant goalkeeper for Manchester United. They needed a goalkeeper of immense character and stature and presence to go to these games when United, the ABU thing was flying, and go out there with that confidence. But he chucked in too many for me. And he doesn't chuck one in here, but he doesn't cover himself in glory, allowing Paul Rideout, for it is he, to go and head the ball home. And United never really, they make one good chance after it, but that is about it. They look like a side playing an end-of-season fixture, shorn of their best players, and that is exactly what they were. And for Everton, they went out there, it's dogged, it's 2 banks of 4, it's pick up your man, it's break the game up. There's a lot of fouls in it. I think a modern ref would have spotted that, the tactical fouling, a little earlier, and I think took action. The referee in that game doesn't. We're still in an era where referees don't want to send people off in FA Cup finals. It's akin to, taking a dump at Buckingham Palace. But Everton take advantage.
The last time the two sides met in the FA Cup final 10 years before.
Well, remember the drama of that? I mean, there was genuine talk. Kevin Moran shouldn't get a medal and should receive a huge suspect for the audacity of being sent. And it wasn't like he punched someone or anything. He mistimed a tackle. It was never a red card, by the way.
And United players, I don't think.
Peter Reid stands up, and who's the guy who gets filmed, says it's not a red card, don't send him off. I mean, it was a questions in Parliament job about that. But yeah, Everton win a poor game. that they made deliberately poor, and United were not able to impose.
It was flat, and they sensed danger. And well done, Joe Royle. A lot of managerial turnaround and turnover in this season, but that was one that what a treat for Everton. That wraps us up then for 94-95, David, and the year. We'll be back in the new year with another hugely important, pivotal.
Massive.
One of the most important, I think, in the Premier League era for sure. Certainly that summer we might do well to keep that within 2 hours. The summer of 1995.
It's an origin story next season, isn't it? It's an origin story, and they're still on the bloody telly. The people from it, but we still, they're everywhere. All these years later.
Thank you, David.
Thanks, mate.
Listeners, viewers, have a wonderful Christmas and a brilliant new year. We'll be back in January. And until then, bye for now.